Part 2 of the entryway table, and in this episode we're going to be making drawers. And if you've never made drawers, this is your chance to see one way of making drawers. There's lots of different ways, but today we'll show you one way of making some simple drawers. And it doesn't come out. You'll have to stay around and see how we did that. Now this cabinet is going to have two drawers, one here and another one here. And when it comes to fronts of drawers, there's a few options that you can do. For example, you can do a flush mount, so it sits right on the outside of the frame. This one's a little bit long because it's just a piece of scrap wood, but you can see what that would look like. The other option that's pretty popular is to recess the front of it a little bit, and then it fits inside, so it's not quite as bulky looking. So that's just another option that you can look at. But we're not going to do either one of those today, are we? No, we're going to do something special because we're woodworkers. And we're going to do an inset like that, so it's going to fit flush inside, but then we're going to do even more. We're going to cut a very small rabbet, and it's going to give us that sort of a reveal all the way around, or sort of a frame. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, we're also going to be veneering the front of this because we're going to be veneering part of the top as well in the next video. So we're going to do that as well. Now, let's have a quick look at the sides and how they're going to attach. Now, one of the difficulties with using wooden slides like we're going to use is if you live in an area that's exceptionally dry or exceptionally moist and the wood moves back and forth, if you do some really fine tolerances, there's every chance that that drawer is going to bind, especially if it's a big drawer. We're doing fairly small drawers here, so there's not going to be as much wood movement, so I'm not as concerned that the wood is going to swell and expand and sort of lock that drawer, make that drawer hard to move in and out. Let's talk now for a moment about how the edges of the drawers are going to come together. Now, what you're looking at right now are box joints, and they come together in a square fashion like that. What's nice about box joints is that you can measure the full length this way, and because they intertwine like this, it's easy to get dimensions. It's also an extremely strong joint, and if you're making big drawers, this is something that you might want to use. In a small drawer, it's not nearly as critical. What we're going to do today, because it's a small drawer and it's going to be used infrequently, we're just going to use a rabbet joint on the front and a rabbet joint on the back, and we'll just use some mechanical fasteners and probably some glue, and that will be more than sufficient for what we're doing for a small drawer that's going to get infrequent use. Now, what I'm going to be doing is applying a contact gel to both surfaces, letting that contact cement dry, and then we'll put it together and press these on. So I'm just going to get started in doing that. And our buddies at Oakwood Veneers tell us the best thing to use is gel contact cement. And that's what we're going to be using. So we've let the contact cement dry for the appropriate length of time, and I have just a wooden tool that I made that I'm going to use to flatten the veneer on with. So I just want to line it up fairly close on one edge. And then we don't use a roller. We use this wooden tool. The first thing we're going to do in preparing our drawer fronts is to figure out the width. And these are 3 15/16, and that one's just a tad more. So we'll do that. We'll go over to the table saw and we'll cut those to width, and then we'll cut the length off. Okay, I've set the saw height to just above the material, and I've set the distance of the fence. You just need to cut that now. I've installed my stacked dado set in here, and I have the test wood. Remember the test drawer that we used earlier? And I'm going to use that and run this through. There, after a little bit of fiddling, we've got that just perfect. Okay, now I can run my drawer fronts through. I decided at the last minute to do the same thing we do on the router when we're cross-cutting, and that is to use a support piece of wood and a backer to keep the wood from moving, just in case there's a little bit of movement on there, and this just makes sure that it's nice and steady. To help speed things up, I've made a couple of components, most of which you've already seen, but now I need to put a drawer bottom in here. And originally I was just going to cut a rabbet along this side here in the very bottom, but now I'm rethinking that, and I'm going to do the traditional, actually cut a dado that's going to be 3/16. So I'll need to do that on all of my pieces here. Now, if you remember the test piece that we talked about, the drawer front, remember we put that little rabbet around it, and I need to do that now on the real fronts, and I'm using my little spacer bar, and I've set the blade up so that it's a 1/16 inch high and a 1/16 inch from the fence, and all I need to do now is run the 4 sides in both directions. Well, our drawers are all dry now from the glue, and all we need to do now is to install the drawer bottoms. And remember, we're making a slide, and this should just slide in nicely, and that's perfect. And then we just nail that down at the bottom. Couple of pins. Now I've got a couple of things left to do, and on the far left and the far right side of the carcass I need to put a rail to support the shelf. This is of course where the drawer goes in. We've done the middle part, and to do this I'm going to install the drawer, and then I will fit this up to it and put a little bit of glue on the back of it and then clamp that, and we'll let that sit for a couple hours. Now the last element we need to do is to stop the drawers from binding like that, and we do that with a couple of sliders on the side here, some bracing on the side. So the way I'm going to do that, from where I'm standing I can line up this drawer so that it sits just perfectly flush, and what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of glue, just a little drop of glue along the bottom, and I can just drop that in from right here. The last thing I'm going to show you here is this little piece of wood, and you can see it's about 1.5 inches long, and it's got a hole in it, and it's also recessed because it wants to take a screw. And what I use these for is this. So there we are looking at the back of the drawer, and watch this, that little wooden piece that I made. It hangs down at the back, and the purpose of that is when you pull the drawer out, you can't pull the drawer all the way out. And one of the problems with narrow little drawers like this is people often pull them out because they're so narrow. And if you want to move, once we get the top on, if you want to pull the drawer all the way out, you just put your hand in from the front, move that little lever to the back, and you can pull the drawer right out. So there's a little tip in drawer making, just some extra little details that you can add. It was kind of fun. It's a little bit fiddly, but you know what? It gives you a chance to do something a little bit different using some other techniques. And I really enjoy drawer making, although I don't do it as much as I'd like to, but it really is fun. So don't forget, the next video we're going to be putting a top on. The reason we did the drawers, first of all, is because it's a lot easier to see what you're doing. But next we're going to be putting the top on. We're going to be doing some special things with that too, so you'll want to tune into that. Which reminds me, if you haven't already subscribed, we ask you to do that. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. I'm Colin Cadet for WoodWorkWeb. Thank you for watching.